Workers in southwestern Sydney are facing strict new mandatory COVID testing. Anyone in Fairfield who leaves their home to go to work must get a swab every 3 days, but they won't need to isolate. Health officials are desperately hoping this extra measure will help prevent the spread of the virus. COVID has claimed another life, a man in his 70s from the eastern suburbs. The state has recorded 89 new cases. That's slightly better than yesterday, but the Premier says it's still too early to call it a downward trend. Tonight we have reporters across Sydney and in Canberra. Kathleen Calderwood begins our coverage in Fairfield.
In the current epicentre of Sydney's COVID outbreak, there's a new 24-hour testing clinic in Fairfield.
We're all in this together. If we can control it here in Fairfield, we can control it spreading anywhere else.
89 new cases have been found in New South Wales.
More than 3/4 of all of those cases of community transmission were close family contacts.
Authorities know at least 30 cases were infectious in the community, prompting worry about other suburbs.
We're concerned about Roselands, Rosebery, Canterbury, Belmore, Sutherland Shire, the St George area, and West Hoxton and Glenfield Green Valley.
The recent surge in cases means new testing rules for Fairfield residents. Anyone leaving the council area for essential work needs to get a COVID swab every 3 days.
This is a protective measure. They won't have to isolate.
For essential workers leaving Greater Sydney for their job, a weekly COVID test is now mandatory.
People will need to have evidence on themselves to show that if they're stopped by police or other appropriate authorities, that they can give evidence that they have actually had the test.
And it seems the new testing rules for essential workers are being followed. Take a look at this queue here in Fairfield. There's plenty of high-vis, lots of tradies doing the right thing, getting their mandatory swab.
Yeah, not much I can do about it, I guess, unless I want to get chucked off the site because I haven't got a test recently.
Now it's 1 hour, but if I have to do it every 3 days, I prefer to stay home.
But the outbreak has now spread to the state's regions. Goulburn is on high alert after a case was found there. A worker from Sydney was helping construct a new hospital.
It's just these exemptions, which are a bit loosely interpreted, that have created this problem, and I know that they potentially will create problems elsewhere.
The kind of problem the new testing rules should help prevent. Kathleen Calderwood, ABC News, Sydney.
And Kathleen joins us live now. Kathleen, you're at the Showgrounds testing clinic. How's it looking? Is it busy there?
Jeremy, it's extremely busy here, and we've just had some shots come through from the news chopper that show the extent of the lines here. There are queues forming kilometres long in every direction trying to get into the showgrounds. Thousands and thousands of people trying to get tested. I've spoken to a couple of people here tonight who've waited upwards of 2 or 3 hours to get that test. We've also been over to the new clinic at Fairfield West at the Endeavour Sports Park. There are similarly long lines there, but I would say to anyone who wants to get tested tonight that I'd recommend they go to that clinic at Endeavour Sports Park. It is open all night long, whereas this one here is only open till 10 p.m. Now, we think that this is in response to that new 3-day rule which has come in. Just to let people know, there is a bit of a time exemption on that. Up until Friday, people will still be allowed to go out and work in other areas as long as they've made an effort to get a test, and then it will come in and be strictly enforced from Saturday. Now, there was also a significant exposure site listed this afternoon. The Coles at Fairfield Forum is now listed as a close contact exposure site for several hours on Friday and Saturday and most of Sunday. So anyone who was there at those times really needs to check the New South Wales Health website, because if they were there for those exposure times, they now need to get tested and isolate for 14 days regardless of the result.
Kathleen Calderwood in Fairfield. Well, struggling businesses and workers can soon look forward to more financial help. The federal and state governments have announced higher COVID payments and other protections. The scheme will cost taxpayers billions of dollars.
A lockdown that's cut deep for so many.
I've been pulling money out of my house, which is not fair. I'm a single parent of 2 boys.
Almost 3 weeks in, the federal and state government are stepping up. There'll be weekly payments of up to $10,000 based on payroll for businesses with a turnover of between $75,000 and $50 million, which have lost 30% revenue.
An important part of this package is to ensure that those businesses who access this payment will also be required not to reduce their headcount.
Work has almost dried up for Lissa Todini's catering company. Revenue was down 50%, but this cash will keep her business going.
Absolutely, it will make a difference to our business. It will allow us to keep our staff on board.
COVID disaster payments will increase from $325 a week to $375 and from $500 to $600. They'll now be available not only in Sydney but across the state.
Previously, those payments were made through JobKeeper. Because that was a national scheme involving very large scale, that's not necessary on this occasion. We can get those payments directly to people who have lost those hours.
The state government's business grants have been boosted to up to $15,000. Smaller businesses with lost revenue will get fortnightly payments of $1,500. Payroll tax will be deferred or waived for the first quarter altogether. There'll be protections for commercial and residential tenants, and the arts sector will get $75 million worth of support.
Whether that money's going to last very long is a really scary thought for not only me, but artists who are really struggling out there.
This is set to cost the federal and state government $500 million a week each for the duration of the lockdown. But with the other elements of the package, New South Wales is factoring in spending at least $4 billion. And that's based on the premise that the lockdown will be extended into next week and beyond. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
Let's now bring in political editor Andrew Probyn in Canberra. Andrew, how much pressure has Scott Morrison been under to boost these COVID disaster payments?
Jeremy, considerable pressure. Scott Morrison and his treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, have been saying for months that there'd be no reinstatement of the JobKeeper wage subsidy. But New South Wales has made it clear too that it was prepared to go it alone in protecting jobs and businesses with an 8-week package costing billions of dollars, $4 to $5 billion. So in effect, it forced the hand of the Scott Morrison government. It couldn't be seen to be abandoning the biggest state. That's COVID politics for you. But the joint response from the Commonwealth and New South Wales now forms a template for other extended lockdowns, although Victoria is already griping that there's double standards, that it shouldn't take a crisis in Sydney for the Prime Minister to eventually act. Will there be another extended lockdown like you guys in Sydney are experiencing? The whole nation is hoping not, but unfortunately that can't be guaranteed because we need millions more Australians to be vaccinated, and that, Jeremy, is an entirely different story.
Andrew Probyn, live in Canberra. Well, the virus is continuing to spread at an apartment building in Bondi Junction. A 9th resident now has the virus. Mark Reddy is outside the unit block. Mark, how are residents there feeling?
Well, Jez, some residents say they're virtually under house arrest. That's how they've described it, that no warning was given when the lockdown was in place yesterday. They're facing some pretty tough restrictions. Food deliveries are restricted to between 12 and 8 p.m. each day. Cleaning can only take place once every 2 days in terms of rubbish disposal. Ivan Escobar and his parents live in this building and they have tested negative so far. They've still got 2 more tests to go during this 14-day period. And when police surrounded the building yesterday, he described it like a crime scene.
I looked out the front door and there was heaps of police cars everywhere. There was a few police people there. So it caught us by surprise, I'm not going to lie. As the cases go up, I understand it more. Initially, I thought it was a bit extreme.
Now, Mark, on an unrelated matter, police seem to be happier with the level of compliance across the board.
That's certainly right. There were 121 fines handed out, 34 from southwest Sydney, but the Deputy Police Commissioner praised the community out there for adhering to the rules. And basically now what he is alluding to is that there were a group of people who got some coffees and then sat down on a sidewalk and watched a movie on their iPad. Police say it's called takeaway for a reason, and they don't want to see that happen again.
Mark Reddy reporting. It was a remote return to term 3 for thousands of students across Sydney. The vast majority of parents have heeded the government's plea to keep their children at home. Only about 1 in 20 students across lockdown areas was in their classrooms.
All dressed up with nowhere to go. Year 9 student Saxon Smith School requires him to wear his uniform, even though he's learning from his northwestern Sydney home.
I'm quite comfortable with all the homeschooling and staying at home and being able to sleep in a little bit.
His younger sister Sienna says there are a few extra distractions in their temporary classroom.
It's a bit harder because I'm always looking around and oh, I need to get food, I'm hungry.
Schools in Sydney and surrounding areas are still open for the children of essential workers.
So I'm a manager at a domestic violence organisation. But yeah, so they're at school. I don't have an option, unfortunately.
And it's the first Facebook Live for 2021.
And teachers juggled online and face-to-face lessons while trying to keep classmates connected to each other.
Happy birthday, dear Mia.
The government says on average 95% of public school students across Sydney stayed at home. In the hotspot areas in the city's southwest, that figure was 97%. While the government's repeatedly said no student will be turned away, the ABC's been told some parents have been contacted by principals questioning their decision to send their children and whether they're essential workers.
I think some principals might have reached out to families to get an indication of which students might be coming this week. And I think that's all right, but certainly I don't support any principals questioning parents' decisions.
Yoo-hoo, we're out of school.
In regional areas, parents were relieved to have escaped lockdown.
We're thrilled that we're back at school and the kids can be learning and we can be working.
While those in Sydney are wondering just how long remote schooling will last.
Absolutely, check in about 4 weeks.
Sarah Garathy, ABC News.
One of the remarkable features of this outbreak is that young people are also falling seriously ill. 65 patients are in hospital, half of them are under the age of 55. 21 people are in intensive care, 4 need a ventilator to breathe. 3 of the ICU patients are in their 20s and 30s. Tonight we hear from those who are still suffering the devastating effects of COVID.
For Claudia Waitsman and her dad, Alain, time together outside is now more precious than ever.
I had all the symptoms that there could be. I had body ache, sore throat, headache. I've completely lost my sense of smell and taste, and I still have no sense of smell or taste.
The 25-year-old was one of several people who caught COVID at the Joe Bailey hair salon in Double Bay. Claudia unwittingly passed the virus on to her 57-year-old father, but he didn't become as sick. Both are thankful they escaped hospitalisation.
I didn't really have any drastic symptoms. I think I had one day of a bit of a cough. I had the one vaccine, and I think that's probably what pulled me through.
It can happen to anyone, and I don't think at the time I thought it would happen to me.
That's a message health officials are desperately trying to get through to young people. The AstraZeneca vaccine is available to anyone over 18 with approval from their GP.
Get it. Because seeing the difference between my symptoms and Dad's symptoms, they were completely different. I mean, I was in bed, couldn't move for 3 days.
There are patients in ICU and young patients for that have no underlying health conditions in ICU.
A reminder that the Delta strain does not discriminate, no matter a person's age. Rani, Hayman, ABC News, Sydney.